Okay. So I am Professor Jonathan Annan. I'm Associate Professor of Logistics and Supply Chain Management at Strathmore University Business School. I had to step in for my Dean of Business School, Dr. Njenga, on this occasion. And I think it is in the right direction because we are talking about supply chain management workshop or conference, and I think I am the right person to be here. Okay, so my mode of presentation, my outline is the introduction. I'll give a general overview. Then I'll focus on areas of intervention and conclusion and the way forward. And in viewing the situation, what I did was that, for example, if I look at my just immediate presenter, most of the issues have been covered, but I try to identify what are the key issues that we can also gain from this conference. What are some of the hidden concepts that we are not even aware of in this pharmaceutical supply chain or this healthcare supply chain? And that is what I try to do so that I can bring them out and we can all learn from it and we can implement it so that we can be very effective. Now, we are aware that healthcare supply chains are in a pickle today. Why? Because of the huge costs associated with it. According to McKinsey & Company, we realize that the healthcare expenditures are growing faster than even GDP in most of the countries in the world. And I can say that even in Africa, it's even worse. Now, recent estimates suggest that there had been a global expenditure increase in health from US 8 trillion in 2018 to over 18 trillion in 2040. And this is huge. And then this becomes a scenario that demands for a change in the gameplay. And then the healthcare sector also becomes a key problem to governments. And therefore, I realized that it is in the right direction that this wonderful conference, Financing Health Products and Technology Supply Chain, is being undertaken at the moment. Now, my focus will be on 4 thematic areas, and then we will also look at their interventions. And as I already said, I try to identify some key issues that maybe we are not even thinking about it because we are thinking of financing in the healthcare supply chain. But what are key issues that are missing that we are not even taking care of it? We have possibly taken them for granted. There is this concept of utilization, which I may not know, maybe it may be new to a lot of people, but a lot of people may also be aware, but we will look at it. So what is this concept of utilization? We will discuss it very soon. Then there should also be a stockpile policy and budgeting for emergencies. And then funding pharmaceutical industries, especially the local pharmaceutical industries. And I'll give cases which have been done in local African countries, and they have been doing very well. Then last but not the least, I'll look at academia collaboration with pharmaceutical industries and how it can impact on the effectiveness of this workshop. Now, let me talk about the concept of utilization. What is this utilization that I'm talking about? It is something which has been happening in our hospitals. And if we are talking of financing this health products and technology supply chain, we have to also know that if we will be successful in our financing, we also have to identify the gaps and the waste in the system that we are not taking care of. Because to be sustainable, you cannot look for money just to produce medicines and then you continue to ride on waste in the system. No. And a typical example of this utilization is that is in our hospitals, items scheduled to be used in the patient, we need to find, were they the actual ones used? That is one question. Again, the items, have they been invoiced correctly to the patient and are they existing in the revenue cycle? Now, this is interesting. A research was undertaken and a lot of errors occurred in this area. Now, what was that research? Let me take opportunity to talk about it a little. Professor Robert Hansford, who is a well-known supply chain expert in North Carolina State University, undertook a research in a mid-sized hospital in New York, just to understand this concept of utilization. And then they adopted a very, very, very simple approach. That is, they found out that they need to track items that they already bought. For example, if there's a hospital, drugs and medicines going to the pharmacy, those items that were actually also used, and items, in other words, sold to patients. And what happened? Waste in such cases can be 30 to 40% of the staff. That is what we buy, we never get paid for. And that goes to waste. And that waste is about 30 to 40%. And this is huge. Now, what are the results that were learned from this? And we have this concept we call bought-to-use ratio. And the research showed that the bought-to-use ratio was 60 to 40. What does that mean? That is really, they were billing patients only for 60% of what they were actually using in the entire procedure of the healthcare administration. And that is serious. And so what are we doing with respect to our hospitals in our counties? What are the lessons that we can get from here? Now, one of them is that we should ensure that our hospitals put in a rigorous documentation process in terms of billing patients, and then tracking materials that should be effective in the system. And my previous speaker was talking about various inventory management policies, but in our pharmacies, in the various hospitals, I realized that from this research, when there's a high level of data accuracy in billing, then the whole idea of inventory management now is out of the whole equation. And so my advice here is that we are trying to find solutions for this conference. That is why we are here. And so I suggest that we should try to be accurate in tracking down products, going through the system from inventory to use and billing, which is very, very important. And this will solve that mystery of low utilization. And so that is the concept of the utilization. Again, there is the opportunity that the universities also can play. And so I'm not talking of only Strathmore University having the opportunity to be here, but there are several other universities and academic institutions that I think that there could be collaboration with government and local private institutes. Again, we have these tech companies, and I've seen that most of them are here. Now the question is, can we have a situation whereby we can have some kind of software development to answer some of these questions of low utilization? I was very glad that the chairman was speaking about data and technology, and we are very fortunate that we have a lot of these IT companies in this section. At least I can't have a few names, but I am not here to mention, but I am saying that this is the role they can play seriously in solving some of these issues. For example, the gap I have identified in terms of this low utilization. Then also, Strathmore University is in the process of establishing a supply chain center of excellence. And one of our main aims is that we should have research innovations and hubs so that in partnering with local firms and government, we will be able to solve some of these problems. Okay. Now, another concept that I am looking at here that we can also have now some kind of insights from this conference is this. Almost all of us are being a bit complacent, and we believe that the pandemic is over and therefore things can be relaxed, and then we don't have any fear again in terms of being resilient and our preparation for future pandemics. But it is not all over yet, because a startling, information that WHO World Health Organization gave out to show that at least at the moment, about 70,000 people are dying almost every week, which is very startling. And then when we look at a research from Johns Hopkins University in the US, is informing us that about 65% of the people in the US have been fully vaccinated. They have their 2 doses, whether it is AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson, that would be a single dose. Now, but when you come to Africa, what is the problem here? We have 83% of the people in Africa not even taking a single dose. And so now when there is a future pandemic, we will be in trouble, seriously. And therefore, we should be looking at the issue of trying to have a stockpile policy, and then also have a budget for emergencies, and this can come from government. So these are some of the issues we can make the government aware that we should not just be complacent, but look forward to being resilient and prepare. And once we have a stockpile policy, this will go a long way, that in the event of any future pandemic, we will not be found wanting, as we saw in the recent pandemic that occurred. Okay. Now, my other point that I want to look at is funding local pharmaceutical industry to upgrade their facilities and production practices towards international standards. And how can we do that? I believe that there had been a case in Ghana that I will talk about. But we all know that some of the challenges that our local pharmaceutical industries are facing at the moment will be large capital investments, which we are aware. And then also we need some highly specific expertise, especially training the workers. And then we also need some kind of increased regulatory environment and overall business environment that will allow for the industry to develop. And after going through my reading and the research I did, I found out that one of the solutions can be the merging of local pharmaceutical firms. One local pharmaceutical firm may not have the capacity, but when there is some kind of merger, then the synergies from the merging, administration, procurement, and production will lead to technical capabilities, which I believe that it's so important. And so we should encourage our local pharmaceutical companies to undertake some kind of measures. Again, we are looking at sources of funding. I also believe that it is not wrong at all when some of these local pharmaceutical organizations, if they have merged, they can also be listed on the stock exchange to raise capital. And that is also key. And a typical example I will give here. Now, let me bring this point first, and also government intervention. Now, in 2013 and 2014, there was a case in Ghana whereby the government realized that the government should now support the local industries to build their capability in local production. And there was a particular example where about 3 local pharmaceutical firms merged, and when they merged, they now had a new name or entity called Denex 18 Stowin. And in short, we call them DAPharma. And they were listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange on the 15th January 2020. And it will surprise you that when they merge, they have over 80 products in terms of portfolio that they handle. And therefore, you now get a huge capacity so that you can be able to compete with the foreign companies. Again, another thing is that you need to attract investment from outside to come into your company. And that can easily be done when they see that your measures have led to building some kind of capability financially and then they can also now come in. And the government intervention, I have read about serious government intervention that the Kenyan government has also been doing, but that led to, the situation in Ghana led to the fact that we have so many local manufacturing companies that have grown huge in terms of profit and size, and now supplying into the West Africa region. For example, one of those companies like NS Chemist have been supplying to Nigeria, Senegal, Gambia, etc. And I believe that local companies in Kenya can be empowered so that they can take up, pharmaceutical supplies in the East Africa region. Okay. Now, another issue that I'm also talking about is that the academia collaboration with pharmaceutical industries can help to undertake what we call supply chain market intelligence. Now, what do I mean by this concept of supply chain market intelligence? Now, you all realize with me, we need to be candid and frank in this situation, that a lot of our companies, and when I talk of our companies, I'm talking about pharmaceutical supply chains, the stakeholders in it, that they do not even know about their own supply chains. That is, there is no visibility right from the upstream across downstream. Maybe the visibility only ends at tier 1 of the supply chain, not talking about tier 2 and tier 3. And so when there is a breakdown in tier 2, because they have no visibility. Now, this is where I believe that collaboration between the pharmaceutical industries and academia can go a long way to help, because our research teams will be in a position to undertake research in predictive models that can exploit public available commodity data sets to better hedge and manage volatile costs in the market, which is very, very, very important. Okay. Another concept that I would like to talk about, which we can also take note of in this conference, is creating an agile digital supply chain. The previous speaker spoke about this, but I believe that today organizations are seeking to create an entirely new business models that focuses on sustainable, localized, advanced technology and manufacturing platforms, which are easily created with an ecosystem of best-in-class partners. And this will ensure that for any creator to be able to do that, you need to customize. You need to personalize it. You need to co-create, test, and deliver products even within the 48 hours for what you need to do. And this requires some kind of innovative solutions. And here, I would challenge our technology companies that are in this conference that they should try as much as possible to give us some kind of software that will help us to make our supply chains agile. The last but not the least, I am talking about the fact that we should be able to also look at our procurement system. And the procurement system that we are talking about, can we also look at the effectiveness of e-procurement? The effectiveness of e-procurement. Now, we are all aware that e-procurement, there should be a virtual elimination of paperwork and paperwork handling that we are aware. It will improve communication both within the company and with suppliers. Now, purchasing personnel will spend less time on processing of purchase orders and invoices, and then more time on strategic value-added purchasing activities. And this is a significant food for thought. Now, but my challenge here that I want our technological companies here to look at is that now we should also know that there is the other side of e-procurement. And what is that? The system can easily be hacked. And if it is hacked, what's next? And so what are we doing to make sure that those systems we put in place in the fact that we are implementing e-procurement can be seriously secured, highly secured. And that is a food for thought. I believe that our IT companies here will also find a solution to that, because e-procurement will go a long way to eliminate the waste we have in the system. So thank you so much. This is the end of my presentation, and we'll be ready for questions that will come later.